Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here this afternoon at this meeting of Archive Online Academy, the public training program of Fondazione Giorgio Cini. Today, we have this second lecture of the course AI and Heritage, Practical Skills for Extracting Information from Historical Documents, led by the team of the DH Lab of the FPFL. And I would like to thank you, everybody. And before leaving the floor to Professor Fredrik Kaplan, I just want to tell you to use the chat for questions or consideration. And for those who are interested in receiving the certificate of attendance, you can just follow the instruction that we will give you in the chat in a few moments. Thank you again, and enjoy this lecture.
Thanks a lot. Welcome back for the second edition of this AI and Heritage lesson series. Let me just introduce you maybe to some faces you didn't see last Thursday. First, Isabella Di Leonardo. She will present next Thursday on the process about ambiguity and how actually you resolve interesting problems when some words are confused with another. You want to say a couple of words, Isabella? You're muted.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, it will be a presentation about essentially the problem that we occur when we have difficulties to the OCR process, in the sense that many cases we have orthographic inconsistency because of course the native data maybe are not spelling in a standardized way, or potentially the fact that we don't have name entities as well, but we have categories, specifically many cases in the Cini cardboards, in the Cini Photothèque, but this is quite common also in other photo libraries. In the authorship field, we don't have authors, in fact, but we have stylistic terms or indication about historical periods. So what happens when we have to manage this type of elements, and how we can eventually structure them and yes, try to retreat them for have a good impact on historical research and not errors that are propagating into our databases.
Thank you, Isabella. And let me also introduce Sven Najam-Meyer. I mean, he will today intervene in this course on the layout analysis. More specifically, how do you analyze the structure of the segmented page? Do you want to say a couple of words, Sven?
No, I don't think it's necessary. You'll see what I have to say afterwards. It'll be just a very general presentation on the introduction to OCR for those who are there. Anyway, glad to be here with you guys.
Thanks for joining, Sven. And so the general, evolution or logic of these three lessons, as Paul explained last Thursday, is really to follow the pipeline of analysis. I mean, we started with the image of the page, and we learned very concretely how to distinguish different parts. I mean, the image, the rest of the page. And so the idea today is to continue, in that process, to progressively, extract the other element. Slowly, arriving to a level where we will be able to read and associate, the extracted words with other information database. So I give the floor now to Paul for the rest of the lessons. Yes, one more thing. Thanks to all the one which have the camera switch on. For the others, please, if you can switch them on. It's so nicer for us to see your face as we teach. If not, it gives a very strange impression, and it's difficult for us to actually focus on your attention. So if you can, please switch your camera on, and don't hesitate to interrupt during the process like last time. It's very important that we keep the right pace so that you are not lost in the different steps. The floor is yours, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Frederic. Thank you everyone for being here on this second session. Got a few introductory slides before I give the floor to my colleague and friend Sven. So just as a reminder for those of you who were here last lecture and who might want to refresh the ideas, and for those of you who missed it, the starting point for this lecture series is really to give you guys an overview of what is possible to do in the context of historical archives using AI that is leveraged to do some of the tedious part of the extraction processes. So as a case study, we thought we could take the pipelines that we have implemented for the Cini Fototeca, which is this wonderful collection of about 300,000 images, mostly used for art historical research. Collection is stored on the San Giorgio Island, and you see typical examples of cardboards. They look like the things you see on the right, and they are structured with an image at the bottom and with some text metadata at the top. Last week, we saw how we could use computer vision machine learning models to extract the image at the bottom, alleviating the problem that the image has different shapes, different sizes, different background as well. So we developed a very generic approach using machine learning. So this is the overview of the pipeline. The first thing we've done was extracting the image, which is what you see from the left to the bottom right. And then this is the prospect of the next session. So on Thursday, what do we do once we have structured the information? More to that in a couple of days. So yeah, this is the sort of image segmentation that we have managed to do last time. However, this is only half of the information that is available. And arguably, the other half is very, very important because it tells us what it is we're looking at. Not only in terms of content description with a title or with some form of positioning, but also who's the artist and where the image is stored, etc. So it really is interesting from many perspectives, from that of art historical research, but also looking at the history of institutions, the history of collecting images, etc., etc., etc. So last time we've managed to isolate those images that you see on the lower half, and they look like this, and you see that this is robust to many different formats, shapes, and types of documents. But today we want to look at the other half, and that is extracting text. And the problem with extracting text, rather, is that it is, in fact, many problems all nested within one another. There's the problem of detecting where the text is. There's the problem of reading the text. There's the problem of separating the text between different units so that you know this is the title, this is the author, etc. You don't want to mix those two. And then, of course, there's the problem of how you represent this into a database. And this is exactly what we're going to be covering up today, from the image to the structured database at the end. Namely, our tutorial, the second half of this lecture, which should last about 1 hour, will take us through all steps. But before this, I wanted to ask my colleague Sven, who's an expert on the questions of extracting text and layout from historical documents, to give an overview of what the problems and solutions are to these series of challenges. So without further ado, I'm now leaving the floor to Sven, who's going to take you across this long journey of different steps and challenges.
Thank you very much, Paul. So unlike Paul, I don't have a very structured slide, so I will ask you all to bear with me on this. This was a bit of a an impromptu, as we say in French. So I'll try to make things as clear as possible without using slides too much. So I will still share my screen because there's something I would like to show you. So please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have a question, if something is not clear. I'll try to make it as visual as possible, but as I said, yeah, it won't be as structured and of course as aesthetically pleasing as Paul's slides. There we go. Okay, so OCR, also known as optical character recognition, is the process which consists in taking an image of containing text and exporting it into a machine readable text. Of course, there are already two remarks that have to be done. First of all, as Paul already introduced it, OCR is not a seamless workflow. So if you tinker around with softwares like Transcribus or Tesseract, if I don't know if any of you have tested these on your documents, you might have the impression that OCR is a seamless end-to-end pipeline where you just put in an image and then you have the text that is neatly output by the software. This is not the case. As shown here, OCR is actually a very complex workflow. So you start from an original image. Then, in many of the cases, it's very interesting to pre-process this deskewing. For instance, this can include like rotating the image slightly. Typically, when you have scanned archive, they're not perfectly straight, but what you want is straight text. So you have to rotate it, you have to deskew it, you have sometimes to dewarp it. So for instance, if you have a very thick book, then you will see that the cover plays a kind of curvature on the image so that the text will be slightly curved. So there's a lot of pre-processing steps that you can take. One I didn't mention, which is very important, or which was very important, but it's still, I can say, is to binarize the image. So if you want the text, and unless you're specifically interested in colors, then you might want to binarize the image. So having just zeros and ones for black and white and not caring about the rest. Then you have the phase of segmentation, which allows you to extract regions and to extract the parts of the image containing the text. So this is exactly the contrary of what you've seen with Paul last week, where you were trying to exclude everything which wasn't an image. This time we're going to try to get rid of images. We don't want them. What we want are the texts here. Then we're going also to segment the lines, and I'll tell you why in a bit. And then and only then are we going to do OCR stricto sensu. And this is my second remark. Actually, we're not going to do OCR. We're rather going to do optical text line recognition, because modern models are not recognizing characters anymore like they used to be in the old days, where you were segmenting each characters and trying to recognize each characters. Now we're trying to recognize lines. And some models, I don't know if some of you have fumbled with Mistral AI, are doing this end to end. But for the sake of clarity, I'll show this to you in a very typical pipeline. So then we have the last step of the pipeline, which is going to be post-processing. So we have our text, but we have very interesting ways of correcting the potential errors that we have in the text. Okay, so I'll start with a bit of history, because I think it's quite an interesting thing that OCR is one of the oldest tasks in machine learning and artificial intelligence in general. One of the very first data set that you get to play with as a data engineer is MNIST. So MNIST are numbers that have to be recognized like this. Back in the days, this was very useful, for instance, to decipher the numbers on letters. For instance, when you write an address, it's It's very interesting. And there were already very simple techniques to try to decipher this as a zero. So what you can do, for instance, is you can look at the image as a grid containing zeros and ones. So this is from an informatical perspective, this is going to be construed as a vector, but I'm not getting too far into details. Just the idea is that a 7 can be represented as a grid of zeros and 1. And depending on the zeros and on the 1 that you have, the zeros being a black pixel, the 1s being a white pixels, then you can, like, depending on the scheme of the grid, you can try to predict a number. Okay, so this is really the kind of the lineage of OCR. This is the ancestry of how we went to there. So first of all, so back in the days when you look at papers from the 90s and the 2000s, you had this where you had to, segment each and every character and try to recognize it based on a grid. Back then, it wasn't done by neural network. You had other shallow machine learning algorithm like decision trees that you could use to say, okay, this rather looks like a 7, this rather looks like a 2, depending on the grid that I have. Now, what most modelers are doing is they are simply here I am. They are simply OCRing lines. So the model is a recurrent model, and it is fed with a line. So typically, if I have a page like this one, here, this one is already pre-processed, okay? So you can see that the lines are relatively straight, okay? You can see that it's black on white, that there is relatively little noise, okay? And that the image is also cropped to the text. Okay, so this will be our base image. This is a commentary by Jeb on Sophocles' Ajax. So it's a book from 1897, I guess. So typically the kind of documents you can find in an archive. This one being particularly interesting because it contains both Greek and Latin characters. And we'll see this will be a challenge for our OCR. So let's assume we have this first step covered. We have covered pre-processing. We have an image that is black and white, and that is not too noisy. Any questions so far? Or do anyone, is anyone interested in pre-processing or anything regarding what I don't know, detail of pre-processing, anything? No? Okay, then I can continue.
I have a
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I
Please
have a
go ahead.
question. The OCR function, I think it's the same when you try to transform a PDF into a Word document. I think there is this kind of process.
Yeah, they call it OCR. So most of the PDF reading and editing softwares like Adobe Acrobat have an integrated function of OCR, which so must be distinguished, of course, in the sense that some PDFs contain the text like included as machine readable text, but some contain images which have to be OCR. And in that case, the system of OCR that is integrated within, let's say, Adobe Acrobat is going to perform exactly what I'm going to describe to you today. Like under the hood, this is what it's doing to transform your PDF into a Word document. This is what it's doing. Yeah. Any other question?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's move ahead. So what we're going to do now, the first step we're going to do, we have our pre-process image, is we are going.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just reading a question from the chat that says, can I ask again what is the full form of OCR? So I'm guessing what is the full meaning of OCR, and perhaps you should remind people.
Okay, so the full meaning of OCR, so meaning, the question of what its meaning is ambiguous. So the meaning of the acronym is optical character recognition. So recognizing a character optically, basically. So that would be a character, for instance, and I want to recognize this as a capital sigma. And for those of you, let us move to Latin character. So what I want here is to be able to recognize, like this character as a W. This is the meaning of the acronym. The sense of OCR is the part of machine learning which focuses on the translation, if you wish, from a text represented in an image to a machine readable text. Okay, so here this W is just pixels. So it's an image of a W. So for the computer, it's not a W. It's nothing. It's just pixels, right? So what I want is to transform this set of pixels into a W. This is the sense of OCR. And of course, a fortiori, I want to be able to translate this image into whose. Okay, this is really the meaning of OCR. Great. So as I told you back in the days, what we would do is try to isolate every single character and perform optical character recognition on every single character. So A, G, A, X, and so forth. But we have since the early 2010s, we have a wonderful thing called recurrent neural network. What recurrent neural network do is they are able to process sequential information so that instead of feeding the AI with individual characters and predict a class to each of these characters, when I say predict a class, that is knowing this image here, so knowing this image here of an M, for instance, okay, so knowing this image here, I want to predict the class M. Okay, the class that belongs to the Latin small letter M. Okay, so now what recurrent neural network are able to do is they're able to process a sequence of information. So for instance, the entire word mother. Okay, so I don't have to have this extra step of segmentation for each individual letter. What I want to segment now are lines, and this will be our first step. I'm not going into page layout analysis right now because you will see for certain reason it could be very interesting to perform region segmentation afterwards. So here, for instance, what I mean by region segmentation is to be able to have, if I want to have my page, for instance, recognized as this, okay? So here, this will be in a country. This will be the page number. I want this to be recognized as a page number. I want this to be recognized as a running header. I want this to be recognized as it's a kind of a footnote, but it's an apparatus criticus, but we don't care for now. So just so that you recognize a region, okay? We'll talk about that if we have time later. For now, what we're interested in, what we're mostly interested in here is to extract the lines that we will be able to feed to our recurrent neural network or our transformer or whatever this is, okay? So the first step here will be to detect lines like this. So I want to detect this as an individual line, okay? Then I want to detect this, the other one here as another individual line, then the other one here as another individual line, and each line will be processed by the neural network or transformer or whatever you have. Okay, so the way we achieve this is normally using an object detection paradigm. So this is the same kind of AI that you will see, for instance, when you use your iPhone to, or your phone, whatever it is, your smartphone to detect something, and like it automatically detects a face, for instance. Well, there's an algorithm that tells you, like, given an image, I'm able to predict the location of the object line. So for instance, here I can tell there's a line here, there's a line here. Okay, so this is exactly the same kind of algorithms that will allow you to detect a face, to detect, I don't know, a car, and so forth. Okay, there are other kinds of algorithms to perform this step, of course, but I'm sticking to this one. Of course, this step can be tricky. So I'm giving you here a very simple example. So here, for instance, if you look closely at an accented language, so for instance, in French, you have accents. In ancient Greek, you have accents too. So you see that lines can be overlapping. So here they're even touching each other, and it's very hard to distinguish lines. Okay. There are also other kind of challenges. So for instance, if you have like marginal notes on the side of your main text, then the algorithm could be tempted to see this as an entire line. So to see really, to think your line is here and include this, which is not what you want. You want this and this to be two separate lines because the text is going this way and it's not continuing over here. So the way you want it is the way it's performed by the green by the green box here. Okay, so these are the kind of challenges that you can face with line recognition. Of course, you can have much more critical challenges. For instance, those of you working with like Arabic documents, where you have these curved lines that can go around the document. So sometimes you have very small lines, or sometimes too curved, and so forth. So there are many different types of algorithm that you can use for this. I just want you to get the gist so we can move on. And once we have lines, we can perform this optical character or optical text line recognition stricto sensu. So let me go back to my document. So now this document would be divided in a set of small images where each image contains a line. Okay, so I'll have one image for this one, then one image for this one, then one image for this one, and then one image for this one. Of course, when you're using an off-the-shelf OCR model, this is all performed under the hood. Okay, so you won't see this. You won't see small little files of your lines or anything. But I just want you to understand how this is performed, because this can also help you to explain why your OCR model is not performing that well. Because sometimes you try an OCR and you see that, for instance, many lines are not recognized at all. Okay, so a good example for this is, for instance, if instead of delimiting the line here, I have a line that makes two lines, because the line segmentation process has done a mistake. Then the OCR part of the process will suffer from this mistake, because the model is trained to recognize single lines, not double lines of text. So it's very likely for the model to output gibberish at this stage. So it's very important to see, like, understanding how this works also gives you a kind of a deeper insights on why you have problems if you have problems. Okay, so then again, we have little images of lines. Now, what we're going to do is to detect the text of each of these lines. Okay. So as I said, this can be very well performed by a recurrent neural network, for instance, an LSTM. So you'd be surprising to see that, despite the fact that LSTMs are LSTMs are a kind of neural network that are sequential neural networks, so they are able to process sequential information. So, for instance, not just a single letter, but to process a stream of letter or words, so an entire line. So here, what the model was do is what it was trained for. And I think this will be a recurring leitmotif when you study AI, is the model does what it's for. So the question is, how do we train a model to recognize characters? Okay, I'll start with a Latin line so that I don't bash you with Greek characters. We'll start with this line, okay? So how we'll train the model is we will feed the model with what is called ground truth images, that are images of lines where we have the exact transcription. Okay, so it's an image of a line like this one. Okay, so Ajax, whose mother was Erebora. This is in pixels. This is an image. This is not a computer readable text. This is just an image. And corresponding with this image, we have the exact transcription of the text contained in the image as a TXT file, for instance, a simple TXT file containing the word Ajax, comma, whose mother was Erebora, parentheses 569, period. Okay, and we'll feed the model with thousands of these images. And after a while, well, it starts to get good. Okay, it starts to recognize that, oh, okay, each time that it has a pattern looking like this, I know that I should predict an A. Then I have a pattern looking like this, then I should predict a J, and so forth. Okay, so this is how you train the model, is feeding it with lines where you have the exact transcription. Of course, there's a problem here. The problem is that acquiring exact transcription of text is very costly. I don't know if you've ever tried to key in one of your texts, or to double key one of your texts, or to double key text from archives. This is a tedious process. I'm sure those of you who have attempted it know that it's a very tedious, it's a very long process. So ground truth data is very costly, especially when it comes to document where, for instance, okay, here you have Greek, so it's not even Latin characters. So you might even have less data. And as you know, and I'm sure you've already heard this, these models, so state-of-the-art models, they're good because they have been fed with massive amounts of data. Okay, this is not necessarily the case here. So one solution we can try to circumvent this problem would be to generate images. Okay, so you can use a very simple algorithm to generate images, and then you can create ground truths. So I think I have a few examples that I could show you. So for instance, okay, here these are a couple of lines from another commentary, and you see they are always showing the same text. And I know that two of these lines have been artificially generated. I can't even tell which one it was. So I think the first one is the original line, but you see, it's very good. So I mean, as a human, you can't tell which one was is a real line or which was generated. So this process allows you to get a lot of ground truths to train your models. Of course, unless this is your speciality, and unless you need something very tailored to your very specific benefits, don't reinvent the wheel. Right? There are thousands of models out there that you can use for your own purposes. You'll be seeing how Transcribus works during the tutorial session. I mean, you have a lot of models out there on the Tesseract library, also on Hugging Face and so forth. So with very little coding skills, you can already have models. But then again, I want you to understand what has been done under the hood and how these models are trained. So let us get back to our document here. Okay, so we have our lines. Now we're performing. We have trained our models, and now we're performing OCR. So we're asking the model to predict the characters within the lines. Okay. This is very interesting here because we have a document containing various characters. We have characters from the Latin alphabet. We have characters from the Greek alphabet. We have characters, we have words in English, okay? Maybe we also have Latin somewhere. I don't know if there's Latin in here, it's very common. So this all to see that when you want to decipher a line that contains potentially characters that you want to keep and that are not from ASCII characters or that are not from like most common scripts, you might want to be able to tinker around a bit and to have a model that can recognize both, for instance, Greek and Latin, or those of you working with historical archives could be interested to have older form of writing like the long S or the final T's or some kind of special apostrophes or some special old characters or even characters from various alphabets, like, I don't know, Armenian, Ethiopian alphabet, and Amharic and so forth. So this is a very important question because our model was trained with what it has been given. Okay, so if the model only sees Latin characters during training, there is no way it can recognize Greek characters or ancient characters, whatever your set of character is. So in that case, it can be interesting to either have an omnibus model that could work both for Greek and Latin. That's a possibility. So if you find one that suits your need, perfect. If you don't, then tough. You'll have to train your own. But some libraries also allow you to take several models and to run them at once. And what it will do under the hood is to take the model that has the most confidence in what it has predicted. Okay. So for instance, here, if I run a Greek and an English model at the same time, the Greek model will be very confident. The English model will be very confident here because this very much looks like L has the, okay? But here, for instance, the English model might be less confident. It'll be like, this doesn't really look like an English word, or maybe it's like AOA can, this doesn't really look like English. But the Greek model here will be very confident. Say, oh yeah, I know this word. This is typically Greek, you know? So this is typically the kind of thing that you can do is like to run two models at once and then take the best performing models. Now, there are thousands of things I could add to this step, but I really want you to be sure you understand and ask me questions if there are anything that is still a bit obscure. So are there any questions on line recognition, how models are trained, what the classes are in the model, how I should choose my models?
There is a question on there's a question
the chat. Sorry, yeah.
There's a question on chat linked on the practicalities. I mean, are most of these models in the end directly usable using Python? I mean, or is there like big switch in practicality when you want to use them? I mean, this is anticipating a bit for the next stage, but maybe you can say a couple of words about that.
Yes, sure. So I see the first question here. The OCR line detection is implemented with Python. So there are a lot of libraries that you can use to do this. Then again, line detection is kind of a pre-processing step to OCR. This is not something you are expected to perform on your own unless you know exactly what you're doing and you want to use OCR for very specific purposes. So for instance, you have curved line or you have very specific things. Most of the time, this is performed under the hood by the model you're using. So for instance, a library that you could use is PyTesseract. This is a simple wrapper around Tesseract. Tesseract is a is developed in C, was developed by Google, has a lot of models out there. It's a bit complicated to install it, but if you have the Python implementation of it, normally it should work if you fumble a bit around. There is PyTesseract this way. Yeah. There is of course another library, Kraken, that you can use, of course. Transcribus. I think Transcribus, they have I don't use it a lot myself, but I think they have a Python API, a Python API too. So there are a lot of things that you can use in Python. If you want to tinker around a bit, I would recommend trying the Kraken API because it's very well segmented, and you can perform line recognition, pre-processing, and OCR separately if you wish, so you really understand what is going on. To go a bit into details, if you have a line here, so what I did earlier was to say, okay, this is to be taken as a line, okay? Well, what the object detection model, so the line detection model, if you wish, will output are coordinates of a box. So you will run your line detection model on a page. It will output a list of coordinates and boxes here. So it will say, for instance, okay, I have one box starting here. So that might be, for instance, I don't know, like 10 and 100, pixel 10, 100. And it is like 200 long and 50 high. Okay, so you have this list, and then you just have to map the list of output back to your image. Of course, this is all done automatically. So this was for the first question. Let me get back to the second question.
There's a second question. Oops. Okay, there's a second question, which
I
is
can see it. Yeah.
The fact that in particular cases, you may end up having an error in the original text, a typo, that you may want to preserve, I guess, from like diplomatic transcription of some sort. Is there a risk that the transcription is actually correcting some errors in the text because of statistical effects? Let's say that in some historical context may not be suitable. Is that something that could potentially happen, like the unwanted correction of an error in the actual transcription?
This is a very good question. It's actually anticipating the last step of OCR. So technically, OCR will preserve what is on the image because the model is trained to detect what is on the image, with a few caveats. The first one is that you might have errors in your ground truths. So, for instance, this is a very common mistake with German, for instance. So if your image contained an S set, so this kind of thing here, the S set. If the image contains an S set, but your annotators have automatically harmonized all your S sets to SS, then the model might end up correcting the S set to a double S because it was constantly trained on data containing an S set as an image in the image, but always transcribe it as double S. So the model is like, oh, okay, well, this must be a double S. Okay, so the model does what it's trained for. This is a first caveat. There's also the intuition that the model could benefit from seeing regularities in the text, so that it will be more likely to have to correct an error. But this remains to be demonstrated, and with a simple model, it's very unlikely that this happens. Where such a thing could happen, i.e. the correction of the image into a new form of standardization, or an error that you wanted to preserve but that gets corrected, is in the post-processing step. So post-processing, I haven't mentioned it yet. I'll keep it for afterwards. But this is typically where this could happen, because you have let's say you have implemented as a post-processing, you have implemented a dictionary checkup. Okay, so you'll check each word that is not in the dictionary, and if the words look very, for instance, here the model recognized not focus, but let's say focut. You know, focut is not in the dictionary, but it's one letter away from focus. Then the model could correct this, but in the post-processing stage, so not in the OCR stage. Okay, I hope this answered the question. Then I have a third question here. How can you recognize the text with OCR if the text is colored? Do you always need to convert the text in black and white images? No, you don't have to do the binarization step. This is optional, and I must highlight that many models can now be fed with 3-channel images. Okay, so it's not necessary to convert. I kept it here for the sake of simplicity, that we have like black and white pixels, so making it very easy for us to understand, especially with MNIST, for instance, to understand the image as a very simple grid. But you don't have to do this, and you can definitely keep the colors. Can the training be with the alphabet of different font? I would recommend it is. You should use different fonts to have a model as robust as possible. So you should typically do it the way it presented here. So you can use the same letter here, the same text, and then you see you have different fonts that you use to generate image, for instance. So I would definitely recommend training your model on different fonts. Okay.
1 second, Sven. Sabine, did you have a question? It seemed.
Yes, it was with the font color, because I've noticed sometimes that even if the program is trained, when a word, for instance, is black colored, it's okay, but when this same word is with another color, yellow, red, or green, the program doesn't recognize it. So
yes, so this is typically one of the reasons why I would try to explain to people what is going on under the hood, because the reason a green colored word is not recognized is very likely because during pre-processing somewhere here, the green has been converted to gray, and then maybe it wasn't dense enough so that it was clearly like or partially erased during these stages. So this is typically the kind of thing is, if you want to have like your own pre-processing steps, then it can be interesting to customize these. For instance, to tell the model, don't just do a black and white conversion, or keep these images because they're very important if they have like very sparse pixel text or colored pixel text and so forth. But if it's not recognized at all, I would say it's very likely there's a problem happening here during pre-processing. So this is a common problem. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
I hope this answers the question. I know it's it's not really solving the problem, it's just telling you where the error is likely coming from.
Yes, it has
Okay, so
answered the question.
okay, great.
Thanks.
You have used type. I'm answering the last question. I'm answering the last question here. You have used typewritten text. Could you say something about OCR on handwritten text? Is the process the same? Does it work at all? Yes, it does work. Of course, it's not as reliable as typed text. So if you have manuscripts, what you would use is called HTR. So this is called handwritten text recognition, and the techniques are generally the same. So most of the time, you would still have the same workflow. Sorry, thank you, Paul. Handwritten text recognition. You will have the same workflow with some form of pre-processing, some form of segmentation, and then handwritten text recognition performed on lines. Okay, so this is a common workflow. It works. Of course, you won't have the same results, but it will. I mean, I think you can have very good results, for instance, if you have a very codified handwriting. So for instance, if you're I don't know, transcribing you know, like calligraphy or like Gothic scripts from early manuscripts, then this is a very, I mean, it's a very codified, you have this whole ductus of how the monks should write, and so you have very recognizable patterns. If you have just your average handwriting, it's a bit more complicated, but it can be interesting to fine tune or to continue the training of the models with images from the particular handwriting you're working on. So if you have the chance to work on a single on the single handwriting, then it can be interesting to fine tune the model. You can also have a look at HTR United. They have a lot of data sets and models. It's a French initiative. So we also do nice things in France sometimes. So this one is one of the good ones. So have a look at this if you're interested in HTR. Okay, I think we covered pretty much line recognition. I'm going to go very fast on the last step, which is post-processing. So post-processing is you have extracted your texts. Okay, so you transform your image into lines, you transform your lines into text, and now what you can do is some form of post-processing, sorry. So post-processing typically include like looking for words in dictionaries. Okay, so if you have words, maybe you have words that are typically misrecognized or so, then you could automatically correct them by looking for words in a dictionary. So you have a full dictionary of words, and you look for words that contain, for instance, one mistake. And if you have a very common word that is often containing a mistake, as I showed you earlier, like focus instead of focus, then you could do this. Another possibility, and this is especially interesting at the time of large language models and language models in general, would be to submit the text to a language model. For instance, this could be another very interesting post-processing step. 1 minute, and then I'm finished. I would just say a word on to conclude on region segmentation. So if you want to extract the texts, where's my okay, so if I want to extract the text, let me just open a new one. This is going to be here somewhere. Okay, so if I want to extract the regions in my texts, okay, so for instance, I want this to be recognized as a running header. Typically, this is very important because if you are performing textual analysis on the text that you have extracted, and let's say you are performing word counts or topic models, for instance, well, on the top of each page, you will have this Sophokleos here, which means Sophocles in Greek, obviously, being the running header. So if you start counting words, then you'll have Sophocles being extremely well represented, not because it's important for the book, but because it's simply the running header. So if you have 350 pages, you'll have 350 times this word just because it's the running header. So it's important to filter this out. And this is typically what you can do with layout analysis. So layout analysis is doing exactly what we have done with the lines, that is recognizing an object, only this time we ask the model not to recognize a single line. This way, we ask it to recognize regions of interest. So for instance, here, this is what we call in classical literature, the primary text. Here, this is a line number. Here, this is a page number. It's a very recognizable region because it's always a small region, generally on the top or on the bottom of the page, containing usually numbers. Okay, so this is what we would do. And how do we train this model? Guess what? That exactly the same way we did train our text recognition model is we're going to feed the model with images and annotation of boxes containing the region we want. So for instance, we're going to train them with a lot of images showing them that each time we have this little number on top of the page, this is going to be a page number, and I want you to recognize it this way. Okay, so then again, this was an exploration on the details and the intermediate step that are all being performed under the hood when you're running an OCR model such as Transcribus, Kraken, Tesseract, you name it. So the goal of this is not for you to have to implement each and every single model of this pipeline on your own, because they already exist, they're already out there. So don't reinvent the wheel. Just know that what they're doing very likely under the hood is this pipeline here. So they will start from an original image, they will apply some form of pre-processing, then they will segment it to extract manageable units, so lines, for the OCR stricto sensu phase, which is the phase during which the text is actually extracted from a line using a recurrent form, a form of recurrent or a form of sequential neural network. And then, if we want, we will have post-processing. Okay, this is what is going on under the hood. Also notice that some models perform this end-to-end and are able to process entire pages. But if you're working with text-heavy document, I wouldn't recommend this approach yet because it's very costly in terms of compute and it doesn't necessarily perform better. I think that was it. Are there any additional questions? I don't think so, looking at the chat. Perfect. If you have any question regarding this part of the presentation, now's the time. Otherwise, I think the floor is back to you, Paul.
Very importantly, which is why I'm so happy that Sven gave us some of his time to present to you his expertise, is that many of the things he has described, we will touch upon in our little exercise this afternoon. The region detection, the line detection, the fact that we can use pre-trained model as opposed to reinventing the wheel if we want to do relatively simple tasks, the fact that we might want to use different fonts, combine them, etc., etc. The fact that we might want to align on dictionaries, all of those we will try to see in a condensed version this afternoon. Let me share my screen to move on to a bit more detail on what it is we're going to be doing. So as usual, I have now created this link to the folder for this afternoon. Please do go now and download it. Just as a quick reminder before I show you the link again, this will look like this with two files at the bottom and then some folders as well. Download everything by clicking on the folder name at the top and then put this in your Google Drive. This is where we're going to be playing with this data. So this is the link. Again, this is a bit heavy because we're dealing with big images, so it's good to set it up running now, and then we can play with it. Oh, should be in the chat. Let me know if there's any issues. And then put it on your personal Google Drive, the same one we used last week to have the notebooks, Colab, etc., etc. So a bit differently to last week, what we will be doing this afternoon will be divided into two parts. The first part will not be in Python per se. It will precisely leverage what Sven has insisted upon, is that there are so many projects that now offer us models that are pre-trained and interfaces that make it very easy to use, as opposed to redeveloping a whole infrastructure. So one of such models is Transcribers, which is perhaps the leading platform in this research on OCR, historical documents, etc. It's a European project that has been run by a conglomerate of many different European universities and research institutions, national libraries, etc. Perhaps some of you are in touch with some of those partners. And they have a very, very convenient interface, which I really recommend for any one of you who might be interested in text extraction using different models, etc., etc. The interface, although it has many parts, but the main interface looks like this. And here on the left, I have put one example of a cardboard by the Chini. And what you see is relatively simple. I will then interactively demonstrate it to you later, but there is your original image on the left, and then everything that is extracted by the different models, the line segmentation, the region segmentation, the text extraction, etc., will be on the right. And then you can click through different models, decide which one you want to use, apply this to your image, and then get the results for then further post-processing of the kind that Sven described later. So in line with what he finished his presentation on, and here showing you another example of such cardboard with the image on the left and then the extracted text and regions on the right. Each region, and we'll see this in greater detail later, but each region of the image has a meaning. So when you do post-processing, it is quite tempting, of course, to associate the text you extract to the meaning of the region. And this is what you would call a metadata. So, for example, in the artist region of the image, the draftsman here, Jean-Baptiste Oudry, you might want to register that as being the artist and not just being some text that floats around the image. And then you can repeat this. This is where the logic of the collection comes into play, because we know how the Chini cardboards are structured, and most likely you will know how your archive inputs are structured. We can tell the system, and we'll do this later, that this bit of the image is the place of origin, this bit is the description, this bit is a corpus name, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so this was sort of the mini introduction to the workshop. What I suggest we do is I'm going to share my screen showing you the different steps of the first half of transcribers, so that to avoid a bit perhaps the dispersion. But by all means, if you want to try yourself with the same data as I've been doing, do try on the side. You might need an account and a bit of time to get familiarized with the interface, but do try, or you can try later with the video. Otherwise, I'm going to be streaming on my screen to show you what it is we can do and how we do it. And then in the second time, we're going to be walking through a Python notebook like we've done last time that uses the results that were output by the transcribers models. Okay, so just as a small recap before we move on, the goal of the workshop today is to go from the image on the left to a bit like here to some sort of structure, a database, you can call it, that tells us what each field is. And this is done by leveraging the different steps that lie behind OCR. There's layout detection, there's line detection, there's text recognition, there's some form of post-processing, and then there is structuring in a way. Okay, so as this seems relatively clear to everyone, I will share my screen differently. I will say that as perhaps most of you have finished downloading the data, I have tried to take into account the feedback from last session and made it a bit more easy for you guys to follow the notebook. Perhaps if you want to use your own IDE, I know some of you asked if we could use like VS Code or that sort of thing. It is possible. There's less dependency on the Google GPU part. So you can also download it locally and explore it locally as well. So this is the transcribers interface. Many different things happening here. And I'm not going to explain to you all the features because they've got a fantastic array of tutorials, documentation, etc. But the core idea is that you work on collections of documents. It's really a tool thought for people like us who deal with archival documents, historical documents, and that have a collection logic. So you've got collections, and then onto those collections of images, you apply different tools. Those tools include most of the things that Sven has been talking about again. So if I open an image, like this one, which is our typical cardboard, you can click here on Start Automatic Transcription and then choose which of the subtasks of OCR you're interested in. You might think of it as being purely text, but in our case, where we have different regions, some form of complicated layout, you might want to do other things. If you're working with documents that are more tables, table-like, perhaps stock exchange reports, that sort of thing, you might use tables, and fields is another form of region analysis. And for each of those tasks, there is a set of models. And this really ties back to what Sven was saying, is that models can be trained to a specific task. Typically, if you want to study or if you want to detect German text, you might want to use a different model than if you want to detect Italian text, etc., etc. Or if you want to detect images, or if you want to detect line versus dotted lines, etc., etc., etc. Now, of course, the idea is that it can be also relatively universal. So some of those models are meant to be many languages. In fact, if I show you the list of models that they have here, some of them covers many languages, like this transcribers print M1, which is sort of the core featured model. That is, you've got an image, you don't really know what language it is. It's going to be good at detecting this 14 languages, the Western European languages, using the Latin alphabet. But you might also perhaps use handwritten text recognition. This was one of the questions being asked, and Sven rightly pointed out that if you have a sort of standardized writing, like you could find in notary documents, for example, it's more likely to be effective. And in fact, you find that most models on HDR are designed and fine-tuned for handwritten notary documents. Okay, so there's a bunch. Very importantly, and this is one of the great features of transcribers, you can also train your model, and you can give it some annotation, some new ground truth that is perhaps best suited for your task, and you can tell it to train. And this is quite convenient because obviously training a model is quite taxing in terms of resources. You might not have the computational resources, and they do it for you. I must point out at this stage that it is not a completely free app, but if you are a scholar, you might have some kind of discount and or association. So it's worthy to check that. Okay. Any questions on the general interface? Okay, so let's move on to what it is that you guys might be doing if you end up wanting to use that for your own research on documents. You have this image, and let's say I wanted to detect my regions. So what you could use, okay, I want to detect layouts, and you could use universal lines, which is a sort of baseline model by transcribers. So let me try to start the recognition, and then hopefully this will work. But sometimes the interface is a bit naughty. It doesn't completely run easily, especially when you do a demo online. So okay, good. So it has run. You see, it takes about a few seconds to do things, and you notice a few problems. First off, so in green are the regions, the region extraction that Sven mentioned, where you are interested in detecting separate isolated areas of text. It detects 3 regions, or to be precise, 4 regions. This one here, here, and here. And already perhaps you can tell that this is not quite right. It's not. We would have wanted something different with each cell of the document to be different. You can also look at the blue lines, which tell us the other part of OCR, line detection. And here, lines are much better. So it doesn't seem to be a problem with the line detection, but more the region detection. And so what you would typically do at this stage, and what I've done for you, is forget about the pre-trained model for now. You can see it perhaps doesn't fit our document very well. So we can delete all of that. And we can manually add regions. So click add region. You select this is the first region. This would be the second region, third region, fourth, fifth, seventh, and eighth. Okay, so this is the sort of region you would hope to get. And at this stage, you've got 2 things. The first one is that you can tell the network, or rather the system, to detect texts within those regions. So if, again, I go, recognition, and this time I tell it to recognize text, I can use the transcriber's print, which is this generic typewritten text, not handwritten, typewritten. I tell it to recognize, and this time it will associate text with each specific region. Let's give it a few seconds. Okay, so it might be that the servers are overloaded on their side. Okay, that happens sometimes, especially, again, when you give a presentation to 50 people. But luckily, you've prepared what it's supposed to be doing. So at this stage, it would give us something like that, where each region has the associated text that is properly recognized. So this was the first thing you do, simply extract the text from each region. The second thing you can do is use the fact that you have manually drawn those regions to retrain a model. So assuming you repeat this operation enough times, you start to create this ground truth that you can then plug back into this training lab that I've shown you before. Okay, so to save us time, and because it's quite costly and a bit complicated to oversee, I've done this for you, and I have created a model which I have run on 15 images as a sample. I've taken 50 images in the corpus at random. I have applied this new fine-tuned model to our images, the Chini model, you can call it, and then it ran the extraction of lines and text. And just to make sure it works, this is another image. This is another image. This is another image, etc., etc. Note in this case that it detects regions even though there's no text inside. And that's good to know because we want our region detection to be relatively stable. Okay, right. Any questions on this so far? This typical idea of fine-tuning a model and training it through transcribers. No, okay. Right, so this was the first part of the OCR, the text extraction, so to speak. What is good is that this interface, the transcribers project, allows us to collect back everything that has been detected at once. So from the interface, what you can do is go here, click export, and then download this thing here called the XML for Extended Markup Language, which is computation information structure that contains many things and that is particularly suitable for this kind of text extraction that we do, because it tells us both the text, of course, but the positioning, the hierarchy of structures, etc., etc. So I have downloaded this file, and you will find it in, let me read. You will find it in here. You should see my Google Drive screen now, not the transcribers anymore. And you get something like this. This is the name of the project. And then for each document, each page, you get one XML. So I can open one here. It looks like that. And it's quite a frightening wall of text, to be honest, but we're going to be processing it to make sure that we can then extract the data and structure it in a very nice, convenient way. Okay, but as you can see, it's got some page information, some region information, some coordinates that define the geometries. It's got some text information here. It's a date, or here the name of the museum, British Museum, etc., etc. And this is the sort of output that you would get from a OCR machine learning model. Okay, this is where I stop taking the lead and go back to the notebook that you will all be using, hopefully. So you can just click on it there. And it will open our trusted Colab app, the ones that we have used last week. And here you will find all of the instructions that you need to go from this complicated XML thing that is output by the machine learning model to a very neat database. So I suggest you guys open this, have a first look, perhaps 5 minutes. You can look at the structure of the files, look at the sort of questions you'll be asked, and then we can go through different parts together. So I'll let me know if there's any question on opening this file, accessing the data. Otherwise, I will be in touch in 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 4. In the meantime, I can answer Alessandra's question, which I only read now. How did I extract? So one of the data sets you will be using for this exercise today comes from the Getty Institute, which has been running this program of creating a massive database of many artists, painters, sculptors, etc., standardizing them in a way, registering when they were born, dead, a sort of biographical label, structuring information like this. Luckily, this is a relatively open access program. It's a bit difficult to navigate the Getty website, but you can query their API and then reconstruct. So what I'm giving you here is a subset of that database that has been reconstructed by me. But ask any further question if you feel. And in case you would like a link to the project webpage and database, it's right here. Okay, perhaps we can start with the very first steps of the notebook to sort of frame the thing. So for those of you who are not the most familiar with it, let me remind you a few things that we've shown last week. So you can run each cell of the Python code like this. And in this first cell, we simply import the different Python libraries we're going to be using. That includes the drive library that tells us that rather connects to our Google Drive. So it looks like this. We can connect. And then it mounts the contents of our Google Drive onto Colab. So in here, we should see in a bit the content of Google Drive. There we go. So if you have downloaded the data that I sent, you should see it here somehow. I've put it at the root folder, so it's relatively easy to find, and we can see that all of the 2 folders and the 2 files are available. This is the notebook. This is some database. Those are the images we're going to be extracting, and this is the result of the transcribers pipeline. We are also importing pandas, this data manipulation library that structures things very nicely. I'll go back to this in a second, but you can think of it as an extended Python version of Excel, typically. And then we import PIL, which is the Python image library. Okay, we will also be needing another library that we don't have installed yet, and it's called XML to dict. As you can probably tell, this tells us, or rather this creates the interaction between Python and XML. So XML is this export file that I've shown you earlier that comes from transcribers. So we can install it using the command and then importing it like that. It should be quite fast because it's a very small library. Okay, any problem on that? Okay, excellent. Now, first step, opening this XML file. We can do this by picking one file just for sort of sanity check or tinkering with. And this is where you put the path to your file. So in my case, I've written this by selecting the first one that comes from the Chini cardboard 16B. This is the drawer, and 69 is the image in that drawer. So I'm specifying the file here, and then I'm reading it. This is what's happening here. So if we run this cell, we can take a quick look at the data, and it's more or less the file that I showed you earlier. It's very long. It's a wall of text. We're going to be dealing with this in a second. I asked for the more technically advanced of you to write the function that automatically extracts the name of the image, as opposed to specifying it here and here. Well, the answer to that was that the image original name is contained in the XML path. So what we can do, for example, is original file equals file path. And then we can split this by slash so that we get every bit between slashes independently. In this case, we want to get the last one, -1. And in that, we want to get this here. So it's the string between 5 to -4. And if we print this again, we're very happy. We've managed to extract this automatically. That's quite convenient. It will come handy in a bit because we might want to go through all of the files in our export here and automatically guess which image it is. Okay. Then we can use a dedicated library that reads XML files and converts that to dictionaries. This is what the little library we've imported, this is what it's good for. So we can call it like this, XML to dict.parse, and then the name of the variable that contains our file data. So we can run this. And already it's more structured. If you're not familiar with dictionary structures, they're very important in programming. I hope most of you will have encountered them, but they work as a key value pair. So if you want to define Italy, very simplistically, you say that Italy has a capital, that's the key, and the value of that capital is Rome, language, Italian, etc. If you do this same for France, the capital, you would define it the same way, capital, Rome, Paris, language, French. XML files work like this, except they're a bit more complicated and have many different key value pairs. And sometimes this is where it gets tricky. The value in the key value pair is a dictionary itself, which in turn has some key value pairs, etc., etc. So this is what the full thing looks like. This is what is called a nested structure, where you've got dictionaries inside dictionaries, etc. Very good for structuring text or any form of information, a bit more difficult to work with. So I asked you guys to look at text regions. This is what we're looking for. We want to detect regions. And we can open our file, and you can see here is a text region. So this would be the key, and the value of the text region would be anything that is after that key. But how do we access this? Well, we need to go inside dictionaries, inside page, which is itself inside PCGTS for point control, ground truth, and storage. So this is what we do. We access the values of the nested dictionaries like that. First, we read inside PCGTS, then we read inside page, then we read inside text region. Okay. There was a question here. Did anyone guess what the type of object this was? Anyone? Baseline. No, not quite. It's simpler than that. A clue perhaps can be found in the fact that it's called text region, but remember that we extracted many regions. You can also cheekily just type, and this will tell us what the type of the thing inside is. The answer was a list. A list of what? Well, a list of regions. So if we want to access the first region, which is this one, we just consider it as your typical Python list with your square brackets and then index 0 to get the first text region. And that text region itself has many information. It, for example, tells you what are the coordinates that draw the region. In this case, they're 4 edges. It tells you where the line is, perhaps what you meant by baseline, Alessandra, I'm not sure, but maybe. And then it also tells you what is read, the content of that text. Okay. So if we want to get the text content of that region, we follow the same logic. Because this is a dictionary, we just need to go through it. Okay. And this is what we're doing here. Right, let me just finish those two and then give you a bit of time to play for yourself in the other cells. So if we define the first region as the first element of that list, like this, we can visualize it. That's what I've been doing just above. Again, this is a nested dictionary, and what we want is that bit, or to be even more precise, that bit here, Londra, which tells us that the image we were looking at comes from London. So, like we have accessed our text regions from this big XML dictionary, we can keep zooming in, sort of funneling in the different regions. And we want to go, so Londra is here, Unicode, text equivalent, text line, and that's it. So this is the text region. Region 1, we want to go first into text line, then into text equivalent, then into Unicode. And we can visualize it here. There we go. Okay, practice time. What we have done here is just go in the first region. That was the point of this bracket 0 here. But remember, if we go above, it's got many different regions. We can visualize them here like that. Right? It's a list, so there are many different regions, each containing text. So what you should be trying to do now is, sorry, where am I? Yes, it's to repeat the same process for every region. And I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to try, and then we can correct it together. As usual, any questions, please raise your hand or write in the chat.
I have a question.
Of course.
Regarding the execution of a command, is it always necessary to put the commands or the words between brackets?
Yes, in Python it is. That's how you call a function.
Okay.
So a function is whatever is named here. I can tell, for example, I can define a function, say hello x, and then print hello x. And so then if I want to say hello to myself, hello Paul, I call this function, a bit like in mathematics, you know, a function of x has some value. This is the same logic in Python.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question on the opening and reading of XML files? I thought this would make good practice because XML files are found everywhere when you deal with automatic AI reading of texts, layout recognition, etc., etc. It's really the core file format. So if you can understand how it works, it's a good practice if you want then to do some work on your own documents. Okay, let me move on because time is passing. So what we could be tempted to do, and this is perhaps more for the Python users, would be to simply loop through every element of the list. This is why I asked you what the type of the document was. This variable is a list, so you can say, I'm going to go through region 1, do something. I'm going to go through region 2, do something, etc., etc. This is what we're trying to do here. By going through each text region, the first line, we're trying to save the content of that text region, right? So if we run this, we get an error. So not very nice to get an error, but we can try to understand why. And if you simply read the region this time, we notice that it's actually got 2 lines. So it messes up a bit the way we've been dealing with the XML for now. Not only do we've got to go through the region and then to the line, but now we've got to go through the region and through every line within the region. First line is British Museum. Second line is probably some kind of inventory number. And in fact, if we go, I'm trying to, yes. This is the original cardboards. You can see indeed that the extraction was quite successful because this is the first line, this is the second line. Okay, so what we need to do is join them, looping through every line of the region and join them, perhaps using a line space to indicate that it's different lines and not just the same bit. But this is what this bit of code does. It goes to the different regions, appends them one after the other, like that. And as such, we have stored all lines of the region. Okay, so a bit more complicated code that you can go through at your own pace, perhaps later if you're interested, that precisely accounts for this possibility that we might have different scenarios, one where when there is one line, one where there is several lines, when there is never, when there's no text, etc. So this evolved function, if you want, takes you through all these different scenarios and allow you to extract the text properly. Okay, so I'm just going to run it for you to understand. But remember that our objective was to go through every region and store them. So if this is successful, we should have Londra, British Museum with that number, the corpus Gernsheim, some form of number, the artist, description, etc. So let's check. Seems pretty good. It seems that we have stored every metadata contained in the cardboard like that. Of course, it's a bit dry now. We don't know exactly what each line is, even though we've got an idea, but we might want to make sure that we store somehow that this is the place, this is the corpus, this is the museum, etc. And this is where we turn to dictionaries again. We can make our own dictionary by simply iterating through the different lines and using the fact that the cardboards have got this rigid structure, each looking a bit like the other. So region 1 is the city, region 2 is the corpus, region 3 is the institution, etc. We can do this. It's this cell, which conveniently is a bit more readable, right? City, London, corpus, Gernheim, institution, British Museum, etc. Okay. Now, on to the last big challenge for you guys is how do we combine all of the things we've done, the image extraction, the name extraction of the cardboard, going through each region of the XML, extracting the lines, etc., and repeating this for every file, because we've got 15 pages and we don't want to go manually through all of them. So you can try it. If you want, the solution is below, but I would suggest you trying for about perhaps 5 minutes or so, and then I can guide you. And while we attempt this question, I can answer the 2 questions in the chat. Lokhang asks when the recording is available. That would be, I don't know, but the Chini people will probably know. So maybe send an email to Irene or Valentina or someone, and they will know when it's available. And Gaia Sitya asks the type error problem. I think we have discussed it a bit higher. So this is expected to be an error for the reason that we've detailed later, is that the text is on multiple lines. So if you go look at this, go look at region. This one, sorry. This case, sorry, is problematic because it's got no text whatsoever. So it's impossible for it to find some text line or text equivalent or Unicode version. But in fact, it's covered in our loop here. First, by checking that the text indeed exists. Sabine asks, is it possible to devise a kind of shortcut to extract the text region or the data we need? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So sometimes with some programs, you can type a kind of, I said shortcut, but a kind of code that acts as a shortcut in order to extract the data we need. So is it possible to do so here or no?
I suspect this is the sort of thing we've been doing. So you give to transcribers the image, and then using the models that they have, they output the text. But do you mean a specific region if you just want one short bit of text?
So yes, I mean, as a shortcut, rather a simplified code in order to, because sometimes you have to type a lot of things, letters, words, hyphens, etc. And sometimes you can have the same result using a shorter code. So is it possible to do so here or no?
Well, it depends what software you would be using. The reason we're going through length here at length is to show you exactly what is happening under the hood when you use such shortcuts. And that depends on your software. So sometimes they would do something similar to what we've been doing. And And if you're happy with that, you can use that software. But if you want more flexibility and understand exactly what's happening, this is the series of steps that are happening underneath.
Yes, thank you. It was only for information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no questions in the chat. Any question in the video call? No, okay. So in this case, I will be simply describing the solution, which you can find on the notebook for those of you who are inclined to making it work. So the idea is that we go through all the files we've got. That is all of the pages we have. Then we simply copy and paste the different bits we have done so far. So we open the file, we parse it. This is, remember, how we extract the image name from the file path. We extract the text regions like we've done before. We just copy this and paste it. And then again, we create a dictionary exactly like we've done. The only thing is that we put all of that into a dictionary. So each page will have its own little dictionary that tells you what the city is, what the corpus is, what the institution is, etc. So if we run this, we can check. Looks like this. Okay, image 11, sorry, 111, 119A 90 has city from the Vatican, it's from this corpus, from the Pinacoteca Vaticana, etc. If we go 68C image 861, it's from Castelfranco, it's the Church of Santa Maria del Pieve, etc., etc. Okay, right. But this is a bit difficult to read. So I thought that perhaps to conclude, as we're nearing the end of the session, we can simply look at how we convert this into a neat, proper table-like structure. And this is done in pandas. So I don't know if some of you are familiar with it. If you've done a bit of data analysis in the past, with or without AI, you will have used pandas, I suspect, because it's a very common, very efficient, very quick Python library to deal with rows of information and to do statistics, that sort of thing. So like I've said in the introduction, it's a bit of a glorified Excel version, sorry, Python version of Excel, in that it has columns and rows. And then you can access any specific information. For example, give me the list of all the possible corpuses, give me the list of all the artists we've got, etc., etc. Now, at this stage, we have constructed a dictionary. Looks like this, remember? A nested dictionary. So we tell it that such image has these values, such image has these values. This is very much a table-like mentality, because these would be the rows and these would be the columns. And for each pair of row column, we've got a value. Okay. So how do we construct our neat data frame from this? Data frame is the name we give to those pandas data structures. How do we do this? Well, this is one line. We're going to call this df for data frame, and we define it as equal to pandas.dataframe. So this is the name of the library, this is the name of the first function, and this is the name of the second function that we need. Then we give it as an argument what we've created in the cell just below, or just above, this nested dictionary of values, and we specify that we give it row by row, not column by column. Okay? So it looks like that at this stage, and we're quite happy because it's much easier to locate and visualize. Those are our images, and those are different values that we've extracted from the text. We might want to have a column that says, this is the Chini cardboard number, as opposed to having it in the index. So this is how we do it. You might keep it as an index, whatever you prefer. But I prefer as a different column, like that. Okay. So at this stage, we're quite happy because for each of the images I've given you in the data set, we have automatically extracted using layout analysis and text recognition the different information that is found on the cardboard. So we can check, for example, if we take the second one, which number is it? It is 30C413. There, yeah, there it is. Here, and it tells us that it's a Pietà by Alessandro Casolani in the Uffizi in Florence. And that seems to be absolutely right. So in that regard, the text extraction has been quite a success. Okay, if not, then I can just move on to the last bit. We're going to keep this part for next week because it's going to fit nicely with Isabella's presentation and the other things we're going to be doing. So skipping this for now, we're going to come back to it next week, don't worry. But just as a sort of summary for now, we can see the progress that we've made so far from last week original image to our extraction of text. So this little last snippet of code just shows you the different steps. The first one is the original scan from the Chini Fototeca. The second one is the extracted artwork. And the third one is the extracted text that we have structured into a neat database. So if we click here, it's fetching the images that we've used. Those are big images, so it takes a bit of time. Yep. And I've taken another one just for the sake of novelty. This is the original cardboard. So I'm zooming out so you can see. It's a big image. Then this is what we've done last week, extracting just the image here. And finally, we've got our little data structure that proceeds from the extraction of text and structuring. And the wonderful thing about this, of course, is that all of that has been done automatically. So the 300,000 images that we have in the Chini, for those, you can just repeat the steps we have done using the same models, using the same code, and you can end up with information like that for 300,000 images, which would take years to do manually, if not more. Okay, I think this concludes the demonstration of this week. Next session, so on Thursday, we're just going to move on to enriching this and having other rows that tell us, for example, when the artist was born, what his real name, what birth name is. We're going to see how we can plot the data we have to make some statistics, things that you might be interested in for the automatic analysis of your data in the context of actual art historical research, etc., etc.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending today's session. And we hope you find it engaging and valuable. So see you on Thursday for the final session of this course. And nothing. And a special thanks again to Paul and everyone from the team of DH Lab at EPFL. See you on Thursday, and thanks again. Have a good.
Sorry, I waited for the last moment to ask a question because I was in the very early stage of the lesson and I didn't want to block everybody. So I don't know if we have like 2 minutes to go through it or not. Sorry, thank you.
Discuss it after everyone leaves so that we don't but very happy. Yeah, of course. I've seen your message in the chat.
Thank you.
And Erin says, I see that this might be of interest to everyone. I see that there are a few errors in the text. Where would that be corrected in the pipeline? Not in transcribers when training the model. No, transcribers keeps as faithful to the original text as possible, the original image. If they are detection images, then it would be in a better model, fine-tuned model. That's possible. You can also think of ways to correct it afterwards. Perhaps checking spelling, perhaps checking accents, that sort of thing. But that would be either when training the model, you're right, or after in correcting it. And Eleonora, I'm answering your question in a second. Okay, so I think I see where the error is coming from, and I can share my screen again.
Thank you.
So it says, let me open this again. But it says XML dict is not defined. So I suspect it's because you have forgotten to run this cell where you define XML dict.
Sorry, Paul, are you answering to my question, right?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Well, it seems like the previous cells that have run well. So that's the reason why I couldn't really understand what went wrong, to be honest.
That's all right. If
so
you try to open a new cell, like here, plus code, and type XML_dict.
Hold on, just a second. Let me
Okay, no worries.
check your. Okay, so XML dict. Let me see. Shall I do it at any point?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. XML dict. Okay.
Yep. Do you get anything or do you get an error?
So if I am supposed to just type XML dict, I get nothing.
Okay, right. So
Absolutely nothing.
You haven't run this bit here. Make sure that this cell here is properly run. You can run it again. It doesn't matter. It will override the thing.
The dedicated library. Well, that ran just fine. So the following one is accessing the pages and so on, and that works.
So from now on, the error should be...
Okay, yep. So that's sorted.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
No worries at all.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul.
Hello. How's it going?
I have another question. Anyway, thanks for today's lecture, and I'll have a question that is related to last lesson as well. So today we have learned how the image need to be pre-processed before we can do the segmentation. And last week we have tried to get the image from our raw data, but in the code we just crop the image with a rectangle. But you know, the image may not be totally straight. So I found that the result maybe it's not like very perfectly to get the photo. So is there like anything we can do with the Python code, or it is like we need to do some pre-processing on this to solve?
Well, it depends what your original image is and what your task is. If you know you have, I don't know, circular images, for example, or or triangular images, I don't know, you can make sure that the Python code doesn't extract a rectangle, because this is what it does. It just extracts a rectangle. You can also not specify that you want to extract a simple shape and just leave it at what it is, the mask that it is. It will just have a weird shape because it's pixel wise, so it might, go a bit on and off and on and off. Hence, I simplified it to make sure it was nice and neat and that it would be very visual. But it depends on what you want to do and depends what your data is.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Alright. I should say, for those of you who are still around, if there's anything you would like me to cover in particular next session, because they're of interest to you or the sort of data you have, or things like that, drop me an email and I will happily see if I can fit in using the Chini dataset as an example.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions from anyone? Okay.
Great.
In this,
So if
No,
there are
thank you.
no more questions, I think we can just say bye to each other and see on Thursday for the last session of the course. Thank you again, Paul.
bye-bye.
And thank you.